Well, that presentation actually segues really well into what I want to talk about today because there's an incredible need to take to show the love of Christ to the people of Honduras. There's also a great need to show the love of Christ, to share the love of Christ with people at Rimmel and Newport and Jackson County and all over the world. I want to talk a little bit this morning about. Well, first of all, let me ask you this. I love this church. It's a very special place, and I'm qualified to say that because I get out and visit a lot of churches, probably more than most people. So I can tell you this is a special church. It's unique. There aren't very many out there like it, and that's why I'm blessed to be with you at least sometimes. And so the question though is, and one of the biggest challenges is, how do you get more people exposed to this church? How do you get more people connected to this church? Because that's really, if there's a problem with the Rimmel Church, it's that not enough people are being exposed to it, right? Because it's such an incredible, beautiful place. Life-changing things are happening here. God is powerfully at work here, but at the same time, there are people probably, how many people within a mile of this building who don't know Jesus? Who are not connected to this church or any church and desperately need to. And I've been to, probably like a lot of you, I've read a lot of books. I've been to seminars related to church growth. Like how do you grow a church? How do you get people? And I mean, if you just want to draw a crowd, there's easy ways to do that. But if you want to really make disciples, if you want to grow a church, you could come up with all kinds of ideas, couldn't you? You could I don't know, redecorate the building, or you could put billboards out on the highway. You could have an old-fashioned revival or a tent meeting out here. I don't recommend that out here in the fields in the summertime, but maybe a fall tent meeting. You could come up with all kinds of different ideas for that. You could maybe bring in better preachers. That could be a good place to start. You could start calling it Rimmel. That makes it sound a little fancier. The Rimmel Church. David likes that one. But the most biblical way, the easiest way, and actually the most productive and effective way to grow any church is for the members of that church simply to share their faith with the people in their lives. To tell them about what God is doing in their life, invite them to come and see. That's the simplest, easiest way, and it's the most productive way, frankly. But we don't do that a lot, do we? I shouldn't say that. I don't know what you guys are doing. I just know that for me, there's a lot of times when I miss opportunities to share my faith, and I assume that probably is true for you. What is it about sharing your faith, or just talking about your faith, that makes us maybe hesitant sometimes? Why are we not more consistent with sharing with others what really, if you're a follower of Jesus, is the most important part of who you are? It's the most fundamental part of who you are. It's the most pervasive part of who you are. Because your faith in Jesus should permeate and transform everything you are, right? But sometimes we're hesitant to talk about it with people who don't share that faith. Why is that? Say again?
I feel invasive to their...
Feel invasive, so you don't want to be pushy. You don't want to feel like you're pushing your beliefs on them. Yeah, okay. Rejection, yeah. Same reason there's a lot of girls in high school I didn't ask out, because I was afraid they'd say no, right? Yeah. I'm very sensitive, Yeah. So yeah, you don't want to get rejected. Nobody likes to feel rejected. Absolutely. What else?
Pride.
Pride? Okay. Who said that? Yeah, Karen. What do you mean by that?
Part of the fear of rejection is pride, because I feel like I'm being rejected personally, not that I'm speaking on behalf of God and He's being rejected. But if I really want to share with somebody what that I would say where I've been and then say what God did and how that's different, and pride keeps things within that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Great point. What else? What keeps us from being more active in speaking about our faith out in regular life?
Probably lack of it.
Lack of faith? Okay, could be. Could be.
Like
Okay.
worshiping other gods, the kind of lack of faith, I think that's kind of, that what we really worship, like if we worship our favorite football team, we're good to speak about that. So whatever we truly worship, we will speak about, so we have so many
Yeah.
idols that we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I've thought many times that a football game or a lot of our sporting events, and I love all that stuff. I watched a couple of games yesterday. That Tennessee-Georgia ending was crazy, but that's really a kind of a worship experience, isn't it? I mean, it really is. People gathered, all focused on the same thing, filled with exuberance for their team. It's a sense of worship. Yeah.
Get out there and oink like a hog, and we won't talk about Jesus Christ.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. And I usually display my Red Wolf pride quite a bit. Since we lost to UCA, I'm a little bit disappointed with my boys, but yeah, you're right. So we'll get out and act like crazy people, calling the hogs or doing whatever for our team. If I guarantee you, if you go out and catch a 10, 12, 15 pound big largemouth bass, you're going to put it all over the place. You're going to tell everybody you know, right? You buy a new car, go on a nice vacation, have a baby, whatever those things may be. You get excited about that. You tell everybody you know, but so often the most fundamental part of who we are, the most important part of who we are, the thing that should permeate every aspect of our heart, mind, soul, and body, we don't ever mention. So I want to just take a minute to look at a story that's, if you grew up in the church, if you've heard a lot of sermons, some of you are new to Christianity, some of you maybe you've never been to church before, and this is a new story to you. If you grew up in the church, this is a story that's pretty famous in Jesus' life. It's from John chapter 4. We call it the story of the woman at the well. It's almost so well known, I hesitate to use it sometimes in teaching because people in the church are so familiar with it, but there's something really important, 2 or 3 things that are really important here when we talk about sharing our faith. And so we're just going to, if it's okay with you guys, we're just going to let Jesus teach us how to do this. I think that's a pretty good idea. So let's just look at the way Jesus did it. I'm going to read the story, and then I'll make a couple of comments, and then I'll leave it with you. John chapter 4, we'll start in verse 3. Jesus left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews did not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw from. This well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did all his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will become thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water, welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, so that I won't have to get thirsty and have to come back here to draw water." He said to her, "Go call your husband and come back." "Well, I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is you've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, "I can see you're a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and His worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth." The woman said, "I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. And when He comes, He will explain everything to us." Then Jesus declared, "I, the one speaking to you, I am He." Okay, so Jesus and His disciples are traveling from Judea, which was down where Jerusalem was, in the southern part of Palestine, and then Galilee is up in the northern part. Samaria is set in the middle. And so typically when Jews traveled from Galilee to Judea or back, they would go around Samaria. They considered the Samaritans basically half-breeds. They were actually distant cousins of the Jews, but they had some paganistic tendencies. They actually had a temple that they worshipped at. It was kind of very similar to the Jewish worship, but there was some paganistic stuff that had infiltrated Samaritan worship, and so the Jews hated them, had nothing to do with them, and so they would literally just go around instead of going through Samaria. But Jesus, He loves everybody, so he doesn't do things the way that normal people did them, and so He just went right through there, and He stops at this well. It's called Jacob's Well, and Joseph had dug it many years before, and He just says, "Will you give me a drink?" And the woman is shocked by that. She says, "Well, what are you talking to me for? You're a man, I'm a woman, you're a Jew, I'm a Samaritan." And he said, "Well, if you knew who was asking, I'd give you a drink." And she said, "Well, okay, well, you don't even have a bucket. This well is deep. Where are you gonna get the water to give me a drink?" And then he talks to her about this well, this spring that he has access to that will well up in her and give her eternal life, and so she will never be thirsty again. And she says, "Hey, that sounds pretty good to me. I'll take some of that. Because I get tired of coming here at noon to draw water and haul it back to my house. So give me some of this water so I won't get thirsty anymore." And then Jesus says, "Go call your husband and come back." She says, "Well, I don't have a husband." And Jesus says, "Yeah, you're right. You don't. You've actually had 5 husbands, and the guy you're with now is somebody you're not married to. So what you said is true." And so she says, "Well, it's clear you're a prophet. So let me ask you a prophet question." Right? And she starts asking him about, who's got the true worship and all of that. And Jesus says, "Hey, a time is coming and is already here when the true worshipers are not going to worry about a geographic location. They're going to worship in spirit and in truth. And that's the people that the Lord truly desires." And the woman then says, "Well, hey, that all sounds good. When the Messiah comes, He'll sort all this out for us." And then Jesus, and this is just kind of a chill bump inducing moment, if you can imagine being this woman, he just looks right into her eyes and He says, "Lady, you're looking at Him." Now, what do we learn from this story about sharing our faith? Well, I just want to make a few quick observations. First of all, Jesus crosses a lot of boundaries, social boundaries, not just geographical boundaries. He crosses a lot of social boundaries. You know, in the story, the woman says, she's shocked that he's talking to her. Why? Well, because first of all, Jewish men just didn't talk to women, period, in public, typically. That was just part of the culture. They just didn't do it. Secondly, Jews typically hated Samaritans. So why would a Jew be talking to a Samaritan? And then thirdly, here's this woman who, even in her own community, was probably somewhat of an outcast, probably someone who was seen as a moral failure, talking to a rabbi, talking to a religious teacher. So there's all these boundaries that Jesus crosses. But Jesus doesn't care. He doesn't care about that stuff. And so neither should you. Who are the Samaritans in your life? Are there people that you're convinced that that maybe if you got really honest with yourself, you would realize I don't like them. I don't like that group of people. Or I don't like that person. For whatever reason it may be. And hatred has filled your heart, and so I don't want anything to do with them. Jesus says, I don't care about that stuff. I don't care who society says I'm supposed to love or not love, hate or not hate. I'm just going to love everybody, and I'm going to share what I have with everybody. Jesus walks into that situation knowing exactly who that woman was, didn't he? He knew she was basically an outcast in her own community. He knew she had lots of moral failure. And yet he went straight to her and he said, I got something really good for you. So go and do that. That's the first thing. Second thing is, this is just kind of a practical note. Why does Jesus talk in terms of water? Why does he characterize what he's offering as living water? What's that? Because they're at a well. Yeah. So as you share your faith, contextualize your conversation. You don't have to make it weird. Just base it on what's happening in the moment. Does that make sense? So why does Jesus talk about water? Because they're at a well. Because he just asked for a drink. Right? So do that. Do that. As you go out in your everyday life, as you're having conversations with people about the Razorbacks or whatever it may be, just share your faith in the context of regular conversation. That's what Jesus does. Third thing, how long does it take Jesus to bring faith into this conversation? About 10 seconds. He says, will you give me a drink? And she says, why aren't you talking to me? And then, boom, he's on it. Somehow we've become convinced that we have to walk with people for, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then just kind of subtly, kind of sneak it in there. Well, Jesus sure didn't do it that way. Jesus just went right to it. He didn't wait for, the perfect time. He just did it. This is really important. Did you know that, you do know this, because maybe you just haven't thought about it. When you're in a relationship with someone, the longer you wait to talk about your faith, the harder it gets. And the more awkward it becomes once you do. You know that, don't you? Because I guarantee you, every one of us have people in our lives that we've known for a long time, and for whatever reason, my faith just has not become a part of our relationship. I just haven't shared it. I haven't talked about it. So let me poke at me and you both a little bit in saying that when we do that, there's a level of dishonesty in that. Because you're essentially not sharing with someone the most important part of who you are. It's like you're holding back some major thing about yourself that really then doesn't allow them to even really know you. Does that make sense? In fact, I was reading this article last week, and it was about students college students who grew up in the church but became atheists in college. And that does happen every once in a while. And this guy, this is a college student, and this is what he said. I can't consider a Christian a good moral person if he isn't trying to convert me. That's from an atheist. Why? Why would he say that? I can't consider you a good person if you say you're a Christian and you're not sharing your faith with me. We're in relationship with each other and you're not telling me about Jesus. How can I consider you even a good person? Why does he say that? You tell me. Okay. All right. That would be, yeah, that's one way of putting it. What else?
That's like a sailor that don't believe in his product.
Yeah. Yeah. If you sell Ford trucks and you drive a Chevy, there's kind of a disconnect there. Right?
Hard to say that it's the best.
What's that?
It's hard to say the other one is the best.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
If he thinks, and I think he's going to hell, and I don't try to warn him, there's a problem.
Exactly. So I'm not trying to oversimplify this, but if I'm a follower of Jesus and I know David is not and he is lost, and I don't share with him my faith in Christ, basically it has to be one of two things. And again, I know this is an oversimplification, but it's basically one of two things. Either I don't really believe what I say I believe, or I don't care enough about David to share it. Now, I understand there's all kinds of nuances in there, and you can tell me about the situation that you have that's different and why that's okay that you haven't shared your faith with somebody. Okay, that's fine. That's between you and God. But I'm just telling you, it really boils down to those two things. When I'm not sharing my faith, even this atheist is saying, how can I even consider you a good person if you're not trying to convert me? If you're not trying to share your faith with me, because don't you guys believe I'm lost? Don't you guys believe I'm gonna, go to hell? Don't you guys believe I'm separated from God? Then how can I even consider you a good person when you don't even tell me that? It's kind of like being a scientist who has a lab where you come up with the cure for cancer and you don't tell anybody. What in the world? Right? So let me just give you the simplest advice that I can about being in conversation with people who don't share your faith. This is my effort at making it as simple as possible without going into all the nuances. The simplest way I can put it is, when you're in conversation with people who are not Christians, just don't hide your heart. Don't hide who you are. Don't try to protect them or think that, I'm trying to, it's gonna feel like I'm trying to, sell them a car or something. Just don't hide your heart. For instance, if David and I are co-workers or we're neighbors or whatever it may be, and I'm telling him about a big problem in my life, and I'm trying to figure out what to do about it, and I never mention that I've gone to the Bible for wisdom, I never mention that I'm praying fervently for God to give me an answer to that, then that's me hiding my heart. I'm not really revealing to David who I really am. Does that make sense? So in conversation with people who don't have faith, just don't hide your heart. Talk to people who are not Christians the same way you would talk to a Christian. I understand there's a few things that Christians know, kind of insider language that's different for, when you're talking to someone who doesn't have faith. But in general, just talk to people who don't have faith the same way you talk to a believer. Just don't hide it. What do you think about that? What's that?
Scary.
Scary? Okay, why is it scary?
Well, rejection and all those things.
Yeah, the high school Chris comes back. I don't want to be rejected. Yeah, exactly.
It's about me instead of them.
Okay. And that's one way, definitely one way to think about it. And we don't want it to become about us. But when I'm in conversation with somebody and I don't share the most fundamental part of who I am, there's a level of dishonesty there. There's a level of me hiding from them who I really am. And then the problem is that when that finally does come out, what do you think? How's the person going to respond to that? They're going to think, well, what in the world? You never even, like, you're this major hardcore Christian and you never even mentioned it?
Well, I think we're supposed to love each other. I mean, that's hard because we're supposed to love one another and you really have faith and you really are trying to live like Jesus. He's the same yesterday, tomorrow, and forever. We're supposed to be like him. And so that's the thing. It all boils down to, do you truly love him like he does?
Right. Okay, good. So that's my best advice. Just don't hide your heart. Just talk to people outside of Christianity just the same way, basically the same way you would inside the faith. Let me then focus for a second as I kind of wrap it up. Let me focus for a second on what I think is the weirdest part of the story. And it's the part where Jesus says, go get your husband. Now, on the surface, that first of all seems a little rude. I mean, let's just be honest. It kind of feels that way. And then second of all, it doesn't seem to really make sense, because what does one have to do with the other? Why does this conversation about me giving you a drink, what does that have to do with your husband? Well, first of all, let's give Jesus a little credit. Okay? I don't think he's being rude. First of all, everybody's definition of rude is all probably very different. We're jumping over 2,000 years of human history, for one thing. We're jumping over significant cultural differences, so it is a little bit difficult for us to read what's actually rude and what isn't. But I think what Jesus is doing is he's just kind of cutting to the chase. He's just getting to it. Jesus had a ministry that lasted about 3 years, and he didn't have time to dilly-dally. And so in every conversation, he just gets right to it. Remember the rich guy who came to Jesus and he says, what do I do? He says, well, obey the commandments. Yeah, I'm doing that. Okay, then go sell all your stuff. What? He just gets right to it. Okay, well, that's fine. That sounds good. You're doing good. Now just go sell everything you have and we'll be good. Just come on back. Go sell all your stuff and then come back. Simple as that. Jesus just doesn't mess around. It's not rude. He's just cutting to the chase. Okay, so what chase is he cutting to? What is her husband's, or lack thereof, have to do with this conversation about water? What's that? Exactly. Jesus offers her a spring of living water that if she begins to drink from it, she will never be thirsty again. What so far in her life has been the spring that she's been trying to drink from? Yeah. Her whole adult life, it seems, she's been chasing relationships, hoping. If you remember the sermon I shared with you a couple months ago about Leah and Rachel, it was just like Leah. And she's saying, maybe this time he will love me. Maybe this time he will love me. Maybe this time he will love me. She's been through 5 of them, and now she's with a guy she's not even married to. And he says, Jesus is so good because he's called the great physician. He just says, he comes in and, like Karen would at her doctor's office, he just comes in and he inspects you and examines you and he says, there's your problem right there. You've been married 5 times, and now you've got another guy. There's your problem. You spent your whole life chasing after men, hoping that will fulfill you, hoping that will satisfy the thirst that you've always had. And I'm here to tell you, Jesus says, it'll never work. Marriage is beautiful. Husband and wife relationships are beautiful and wonderful, and they're life-giving, but they are not ultimately life-giving. They are not the ultimate goal. They will, no matter how perfect your marriage can be, no matter how perfect your job can be, no matter how perfect your kids or your grandchildren can be, they will never ultimately satisfy the deepest longing of your heart. And until you know that, you're going to continue to chase after springs of water that will just leave you thirsty again. And Jesus says, if you'll drink from this spring, you will never, ever be thirsty again. And the thing is, when you chase after marriage, kids, success, whatever it may be that you're chasing after, whatever spring that you're trying to drink from, part of the problem, not only will it never satisfy you, but you will also do great damage to the people you're in relationship with. Because if my marriage to Monica is when I'm trying to find ultimate satisfaction from, if she is the spring that I'm drinking from, hoping that she in my marriage will give me that level of infinite, eternal satisfaction, do you know how much weight I'm placing on her? Sometimes we do that to our spouse. Sometimes we do that to our kids. Sometimes we do that with our career, our looks, our talent. But what if that thing, that spring we're drinking from, goes away? What if our kids disappoint us? What if our marriage fails? What if we get fired from our job? What if our looks fade? What if my position of power goes away? What if my health fades? Whatever it is that you're putting ultimate stock in, if it isn't in God, it can be taken away. And then where are you? You're thirsty again. And Jesus says, if you'll drink from this spring, you'll never be thirsty again. Just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. This is funny, but no one asked, why are you talking to her? Why was he talking to her? Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, this is beautiful. Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? Now, Jesus hadn't literally told her everything she ever did, but you know what? It felt like he did, because he looked right through her. He saw her all the way to the bottom. And you can imagine when she went to the town and said to the people in the town, come meet a man who told me everything I ever did. You can imagine the people in the town going, everything? He knows everything? And she says, yeah. And imagine, just in that moment, imagine the spring welling up inside her. Because she knows he's some kind of prophet. And he knows exactly who she is. And he has crossed all these boundaries, these social boundaries, to go be with her. He has loved her to the bottom, even knowing who she is completely, and has offered her the most important gift that anyone can ever offer. Imagine her, in that moment, imagine her coming back to life. If you've ever heard a sermon on this text, you've probably heard people say, probably the reason that she was at the well at noon is because that's when nobody else was there. Because she was rejected by probably her own people. But here, this Jewish man who's a rabbi knows exactly who she is, and he comes and gives her the most beautiful, the most powerful gift that any person can give. And imagine in that moment how she comes back to life. That's amazing. They came out of the town and made their way toward him. Meanwhile, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. He said to them, I have food to eat that you don't know anything about. This is funny. Then his disciples said to each other, did somebody bring him some food? and you can imagine why Jesus was a little frustrated most of the time, right? He says, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Don't you have a saying, it's still 4 months until harvest? I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They're ripe for harvest. Even now, the one who reaps draws a wage and harvests a crop for eternal life, so that the sower and the reaper may be glad together. Thus the saying, one sows and another reaps, is true. I sent you to reap what you have not worked for. Others have done the hard work, and you have reaped the benefits of their labor. Real quick, a couple of things about that. He says, my food is to do the will of him who sent me. In this story, Jesus talks about faith. He talks about his relationship with God as water and as food. Is your relationship with God that way? Is it like food and water? Like if you're not with the Lord regularly, you just get thirsty and hungry, and I got to have it. It's food and it's water. And also, Jesus says, my food is to do the will of God. Is that not true for us too? He says, my appetizer is to do the will of God. He doesn't say, my dessert is to do the will of God. He says, my food, this is meat and potatoes. In other words, this is everything. This is it. So he's saying, wherever you go, whatever you do, whether you're at the John Deere parts counter, whether you're at the Chinese restaurant after church, whether you're at the office, whether you're in the field, it all belongs to God. My food is to do his will. And then he says, the harvest is ripe. Quit waiting for an opportune time. If you got somebody that you know that you've just kind of been sitting back waiting for the perfect time to share your faith with them, well, quit doing that. The harvest is ripe. Go talk to them. Quit beating around the bush. Quit waiting. In this story, it took Jesus 2 sentences before he's sharing his faith. Don't wait around. The harvest is ripe. It's ready. So here's my summation of this story. Jesus takes a simple request for a drink of water, and he leads an entire city to the Lord. Here's how it ends. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the woman, we no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world. Let's pray. Holy Lord and God, will you give us courage today? Will you give us strength today? Will you give us the love we need today to share the faith that's in our hearts with people who are so thirsty? We pray this through Jesus. Amen. So, maybe you're one who's thirsty for whatever reason. So if you're thirsty today, there's going to be people back there with drinks of water for you that will meet you and talk with you and share with you, and we'll help you find whatever it is you're looking for. And we're going to do that now while we stand, while we sing.